does, what problems we solve for our customers, and how we integrate with ServiceNow. Sumo Logic is the machine data intelligence and analytics company. We enable our customers to collect data from their applications infrastructure and data sets that are related to their applications and help them gain operational and security insights as well as business insights out of that data. We are built as an elastic cloud. We're delivered as a pure SaaS, and we're very easy to get going with. We can solve enterprise class, enterprise-wide problems, as well as small department-level focus problems very quickly. We're very secured and certified. We encrypt everything, all of the data, all of our customer data, from all the way in transit and at rest. And we have certifications that we received from external auditors, certifications such as SOC 2, HIPAA attestation, FIPS, and others. We have nearly 400 customers across a variety of industries, and varieties of sizes of customers, and varieties of geographies, at this point pretty much in all corners of the world. What I'd like to do now is spend a few minutes and talk about the problems that we solve for our customers. The most prevalent use case that our customers leverage Sumo Logic for is the application availability and performance. We do this by enabling our customers to collect all of the data from their applications and the application supporting infrastructures, including open source technologies, custom code, operating system data, network data, and everything else in between, to monitor key performance indicators and key risk indicators in their operational data in order to ensure that the apps are running and available. They use Sumo Logic to understand what's going on within their app in real time. They use it to determine root causes of failures, solve those root causes, and ultimately improve the availability and uptime of their application and improve how they serve their customers. So that's the core and primary use case today for Sumo Logic. The second and related use case is the customer insight or application intelligence use case. Many of our customers who use us for availability and performance transition into using Sumo Logic also for customer insights use case. Why? Well, primarily because that data that they use for operational availability of the application can also tell them a lot about their customers, how they use their apps, what they're using, what they're not using, what they're buying, where they're moving, which features are being used, which features are not being used, and essentially gives them the ability to distill the IT data into valuable business insights and leverage and get better ROI out of the IT technology by also improving their customer and application visibility. And the third use case is the security and compliance use case. This is a broad category, and it starts typically with relatively straightforward use cases such as PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, and others, where our customers take the same data from their apps and infrastructure and help them apply a lens to it that helps them actually determine what their compliance posture is. It allows them to shorten the audit timeframes. It allows them to proactively manage their compliance and ensure that their business is operating within the boundaries of what those compliance regulations state. They also use Sumo Logic for real-time correlation, alerting, and monitoring. And beyond that, Sumo Logic is integrated with the cloud infrastructure and the cloud stack. So many of our customers use Sumo to secure their apps and secure workloads in the cloud and SaaS applications as well. We're deeply integrated with the best-of-breed cloud technologies today, such as AWS CloudTrail, ELB, Akamai, CDN, Akamai Web Application Firewall, Heroku, and various others, in order to provide our customers with in-depth visibility into what's going on within their cloud infrastructure that they either run their applications on or use to run SaaS apps that are third-party delivered. So those are the three core use cases. and I'll transition now and talk a little bit about what the product actually is. So how we solve those use cases, it's pretty straightforward. Our product does 4 core things. It allows you to collect all of your data that's relevant to these 4 use cases, whether your application runs on a proprietary device, or it runs in a mobile device, or it runs in a browser. We collect the data that application produces, as well as the data that's produced by the supporting infrastructure. We stream that data in real time into the cloud, where it's indexed, massaged, parsed, and essentially prepared for real-time analysis. Once the data is in the cloud and it's actually delivered into our cloud, you do 3 core things with that data. You can first search and correlate it. You can find root causes of failures. You can correlate events to understand what's actually going on and what are the conditions that you find in that data. You can visualize that data using powerful visualization technologies that allow you to actually have a very good way to not miss important things, to monitor in real time, and to understand how your applications and infrastructure are behaving. And finally, you can use our powerful machine learning technologies and techniques to detect unknown events, to be able to apply these techniques and let the human operator learn from what data is telling them through the technologies that we deliver, and I'll talk about those in a second. So now I'm going to transition and talk a little bit more about the specific capabilities in Sumo Logic that allow us to integrate deeply into ServiceNow event management stack, and why that's unique, and why the combination of ServiceNow and Sumo Logic is greater than the parts. So there are a few really core and powerful analytic capabilities that allow us to transition into ServiceNow only the things that really matter and reduce the noise that your operations team has to deal with. The first capability inside Sumo is the search and filtering. We have a very scalable engine and a very powerful search capabilities that allow you to identify a handful of events amongst billions of events at any point in time. This allows you to search across one source, one file, or all of your sources in your infrastructure. And it can scale to terabytes, running thousands of queries a day across terabytes of data per day. The second is the correlation, powerful correlation technology, which allows you to not just look at one event or one event type, but rather allow you to correlate between related events to actually determine a more complex piece of information and really detect that condition that you're looking for that indicates either a problem or a security issue. You can correlate across sources, you can enrich data with context, and you can detect and create compound and complex events out of your log data. The third technology and capability is pattern discovery. Our machine learning-based log reduce technology allows you to extract patterns of data, which help you determine what are those things that you need to focus in on that you might not have otherwise been able to detect using simple search or correlation technologies, because you didn't even know that these conditions are occurring. Log reduce will find those patterns and help your operations team identify what they need to focus in on, whether they're troubleshooting or monitoring in real time. And the final, last but not least technology is our anomaly detection technology, which leverages the log reduce and our patent-pending pattern discovery engine to learn how your application and infrastructure are behaving in real time, to determine what is the normal behavior that you should expect to see inside of your data, inside of your application, to then monitor for changes from that behavior without your operators or humans having to tell the engine what they need to monitor for. It is self-adjusting, it learns from the data, it discovers anomalies, and bubbles those anomalies and those new events across sources to your operations team or to your or send them to ServiceNow through the ServiceNow interface in order to be able to trigger appropriate workflows to solve those problems and find remediation steps that will quickly bring systems and applications back to normal. So those are the 4 techniques that we use to triage and reduce the amount of data that needs to flow from your log and machine data infrastructure into ServiceNow, and it allows you to reduce that to only the things that matter and have your teams that are running the infrastructure and applications really take care of the stuff that really they should be doing in real time. So I'm going to transition now to Dan to take us through the ServiceNow portion of the program.
Thank you, Bruno. And thank you for everyone that's on the call. I appreciate the invitation to have ServiceNow discuss this integration that we're so proud of. Now, Bruno talked in some depth about what the integration does and how it fits into the core technology of Sumo Logic. What I thought I'd spend a few minutes on is talking about why it matters in the context of all of the things that are happening to us as an IT, as IT organizations. By way of background, I've been at ServiceNow about 3 years, primarily in product management, although in the last about 6 to 9 months I've been in product strategy, focusing specifically on the ITOM, or IT Operations Management market. To begin with, I thought I'd articulate what we see as some of these kind of tectonic shifts that are impacting the way IT delivers services to the business. Now, if you think about some of the kind of meta trends that affect us, it should come as no surprise that there's a dramatic shift toward modern data center architectures, and what the kind of corollary impact is that applications are getting so much more complex, and part of that complexity is they're requiring very frequent configuration changes, and those frequent configuration changes generate a lot more events. So there's massive amounts of additional data that these modern apps and modern architectures are generating, and in part that's because of other trends like BYOD, right? We're now having to support lots more users coming in continuously, 24/7, from all different kinds of interfaces across all kinds of different networks. So phenomenally more challenging environment for us as an IT culture to deliver the same set of services to. And oh, by the way, the expectations from our end users are only increasing, right? We bring in a kind of consumerized notion of availability and performance, kind of honed from using other services outside of the workplace, and we just expect key business services, whether that's payroll processing or email or the e-commerce portal. We expect those to be available just like we expect Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter to be available. And now set that against the backdrop of kind of a strategy shift that's taking place in IT as well, and that's where we're trying to shift from being kind of traffic cops, kind of dictating to the business what technologies they can and can't use, to advisors, technology advisors that educate the business about how to have engaging technology experiences. Because when you think about it, in the next, call it 3 to 5 years, just about every company, every organization on the planet is really going to become a software company, right? So that requires IT, or it gives IT to have this opportunity to take a leadership role. So to go from being kind of reactive to problems and incidents to being proactive, to move from a kind of tactical seat around a small table to being a strategic advisor at the big table, at the board table, in the C-suite. And we want the business to think of us not as being kind of an obstacle or an impediment to innovation, but an enabler. So kind of consistent with that way of thinking about the tectonic shifts that are underway, I want to share how we think about the value of ServiceNow technology to enable this transformation to take place. So oftentimes you're in environments where the volume and the nature of the requests that come into IT from the business are somewhat chaotic. So just somewhat of a gunshot approach to the business wanting a variety of services and a variety of changes, but oftentimes there's no kind of central configuration plane for assessing the relative priority and the scope of work to fulfill those requests. What ServiceNow does is provide that single source of record, that central management plane from which you can make sense out of this kind of otherwise, chaotic sea of requests. So at its core, ServiceNow's technology is really a very robust workflow engine with a forms builder sitting on top of it. But what we're best known for is the applications that we've developed that many of you may use already that help to kind of manage that chaos. And those tend to fall into several different suites. Operations management, which is the one we're going to focus on with the Sumo Logic integration today. Application development, kind of the ALM, the internal facing side of managing and provisioning and distributing applications. Then there's the service management applications, loosely aligned with the ITIL disciplines. And on top of that is a layer of business management applications that help to communicate the services IT is providing out to the business. And those all kind of fit in the framework of this enterprise service model, which at its core is really this kind of generic request fulfill process whereby some business user has a request, whether it's for a laptop or an account to be provisioned, or there's downtime, there's a problem that needs to be resolved. There's some request that starts the process, and on the other end of that request, there's some fulfillment. There's some fulfiller, right? There's some organization responsible for delivering the service that's being requested. Now, in the middle of the request and the fulfillment, there's some process, right? And that process tends to have some kind of familiar patterns. There's workflow that kicks off. There are approvals. There are notifications. Maybe there's a catalog on the front end. And to us, that's kind of the canonical model of enterprise service relationships. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is put that model of enterprise service relationships into the context of events and event management, and talk about the strategic value of this relationship with Sumo Logic and ServiceNow. So we're best known for the IT service management processes that we automate, which typically apply some kind of sane, repeatable process to events that are human generated, right? Person has a problem, they raise their hand, they go to the service catalog, they submit an issue, another human being goes and fulfills that request. Well, we think that machines can do a similar thing. They can also, quote, raise their hand and indicate when they have a problem. And what the ITOM plus ITSM relationship is all about is applying that kind of familiar ITSM, the service management pattern, to events that happen to have been generated from infrastructure, from machines. So the kind of ITOM journey that we've been on started a few releases back with an application we released that did cloud provisioning. So we could provision virtual infrastructure in either a public cloud environment like AWS or a private cloud environment through something like a vSphere hypervisor. Well, we extended that subsequently to include configuration automation, whereby we'll do a discovery on your Chef or Puppet server, and you can actually attach either a Chef recipe or a Puppet manifest to a CI, and then auto-manage the state of the configuration of the CI to be in a desired state using those configuration automation tools. Well, after that, we realized that there was a critical piece that needed to be layered on, and that was the need to go from managing CIs that came in typically through our horizontal discovery tool to managing business services. So we went and built out a vertical discovery system that actually maps which CIs are related to business services. In part, that was through an acquisition you might have heard us make recently called Nebula. Okay, so now we have this service taxonomy living in the CMDB that can actually help the business identify which CIs matter, right? Which services are critical versus, which CIs may have an issue, but ones that are lower priority. So once we have that service taxonomy sitting in the ITSM infrastructure, then the next thing that's really important is to be able to monitor the health of those services. That's where event management comes in, and our event management solution, which we introduced in our most recent release, our Eureka release, is a lightweight monitor of monitors that relies on other systems to feed it kind of sanitized pre-processed events, and that's where Sumo Logic comes in. So Sumo Logic is taking the role of, like Bruno said, processing these billions of events and making sense out of them. And then when Sumo identifies that something is impacting a business service or requires some remediation, it then feeds into either incident management in ServiceNow or event management, whereby the IT service management process can take over and take that incident that affects the service through to resolution. Now, ITBM on the left side of this slide, IT Business Management, is another component of our technology that communicates these events and these services and these CIs and the configuration of all of those CIs in the infrastructure in a vocabulary that the business understands. There's a CIO dashboard for internal-facing IT, kind of rationalization of what's going on in the infrastructure, and then there's a service owner-facing dashboard that communicates, is the service up or down? What's it costing me? Are we behind schedule or ahead of schedule with respect to projects associated with that service? What do I need to tell my stakeholders when they ask me is my service available and or how is it performing and what does it cost us? So that's how we see ITBM Business Management front-ending this kind of holy matrimony of service management with operations management. So to put a finer point on the value, kind of the strategic value of this, this relationship, I wanted to take you through kind of this inverted pyramid. Kind of at the lowest level of the pyramid, we're focused on just detecting incidents and being able to move from the detection in the monitoring side to incident generation in ServiceNow, which can then be managed through the service management lifecycle. So that's really phase one. So the second phase that I touched upon when I talked about configuration automation is being able to take those incidents or events and auto-remediate, closed-loop change management, whereby the configuration automation script will be associated with a pattern that's identified by the monitoring infrastructure, and automatically that CI, but because it's being managed by configuration automation, can auto-remediate itself, get back to the desired state. Now, kind of at the top level, the state that we want all of our customers to achieve is where we're not just monitoring infrastructure, we're not just auto-remediating infrastructure, we're actually monitoring health of business. We're monitoring all the transactions across all of those various types of requests so that just like we can detect and resolve incidents generated from the infrastructure, we might similarly be able to detect or monitor, detect, and auto-resolve issues wherever they happen to be in the business, whether or not they pertain to the domain of IT. Now, with that said, hopefully I gave you a sense of why this partnership matters and why we think this is a critical piece of the infrastructure that every IT organization should be deploying, a combination of Sumo Logic on the monitoring and standardization of event side, as well as ServiceNow on the service management and communication of service health to the business side. With that said, I'll leave it my contact information. If you have any questions about the integration or the ServiceNow role in the partnership, feel free to contact me. And with that, I'll hand back to Bruno and the team for a demo.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. That was great. So I'm going to just give a quick intro into what this integration is about, a bit more detail about what you're going to see in the demo. So what is this integration all about? We talked about the event detection. We talked about sort of the general strategy and visibility through ServiceNow discussion. And now let's talk about what is the actual integration. So first of all, this is a integration from ServiceNow into Sumo Logic into ServiceNow's Eureka event management APIs. It is a real-time cloud-to-cloud integration where events will flow from your Sumo Logic cloud into the ServiceNow cloud as they're detected and analyzed. These events will enrich CI through automatic mapping, allow you to create and trigger workflows to auto-remediate or do other things. And it doesn't stop there. It's not just an API event flow integration. We've also integrated our UIs to facilitate workflows, to facilitate troubleshooting and investigation steps that allow your operators to quickly determine how the event impacts the service and how then to remediate and investigate that event in order to quickly resolve those issues and bring system and applications back online. It allows you to drill down from the UI Sumo Logic into ServiceNow and vice versa, and I'll demonstrate that. And it also provides you with the ability to monitor the full and total event flow from Sumo Logic into ServiceNow to have a good visibility into the actual changes in behavior of what your IT event detection technology is detecting and flowing over into your service management technology. So that's the kind of the high level of the integration, and I'm going to switch into the demo mode right now. So, are you able to see? You are. We're good. Okay, excellent. So, I will start with the dashboard for our payroll application that we've developed, that is based on the SAP Financials technology that we're monitoring that time. So what you're seeing here is a real-time dashboard of some set of core KPIs and KRIs that your operations team might want to know when they change, what the impact on this application they mean. So here, what you're monitoring, you're looking at geolocation of users, you're looking at response or distribution, you're looking at IP access clients, looking at similar set of information over time. Down here, you're looking at a very granular statistics on response times across the world. You're looking at the spikes and changes in response codes and things like that. So essentially, you're monitoring this, and here we're seeing that something has changed. Here we're seeing that at some point in time, a few minutes ago, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, some change has happened. Something has triggered an issue in this application where we're seeing the number of timeouts spiking from just a couple every minute or two to more than 1,000 in the recent time frame. So now we need to see how does that impact your application and what are the workflows. So what we've created in this integration is a specific set of technologies to detect some of the events, to signal and send those events into ServiceNow, and then through the workflow I'm going to follow, show you how you can use those technologies to investigate and resolve this issue. So I'm now switching back here to the ServiceNow interface, and here we're looking at the event dashboard, which shows you the core statistics events that Sumo Logic and other event sources are sending into ServiceNow. So here on the right, you see that there are some alerts that are occurring today on the 31st that that are above warning in nature, and that is probably what has been triggered based on what we've just observed in the real-time monitoring system inside Sumo Logic. So if I scroll through here, you can see down here at the bottom of the screen that we have some alerts that are now showing up that are specific to the specific application that we're observing and monitoring. So in this case, up here at the top, you see very specific alerts that are related to SAP Financials, and we can start investigating right there. So I'll click on the first one and see what we've got. So here we see that the source of this alert is Sumo Logic. It means that it's been delivered into ServiceNow from Sumo Logic. That we have mapped that event automatically into the SAP Financial configuration item, and simply hovering next to it, you can see which business services that is impacting. We'll go over that in a little bit more detail in a second. And it also shows you that an incident was created based on that alert automatically because of the type of alert and the severity of that alert that we've carried through from Sumo Logic. So here, if I click on this incident, what you can see here now is that workflow has created this incident with all of the appropriate levels of impact, urgency, priority, and other things. And from there, you can actually trigger and take a look at what's going on inside of the business services and how they're impacted. So here we're highlighting the business service SAP Financial Accounting, which is related to other business services and other infrastructure. And here you can quickly see how that business service is impacted. And beyond just that one alert and that one incident that we saw, there's a variety of other things that we've layered in here that show you important things about it. For example, if you observe here, there's a high median response time. Another correlation rule that is detecting, not looking at the actual root cause, but looking at the symptom, and in this case detecting that the median response time across the world has jumped, and it is probably something that needs to be investigated. Obviously these events are related, and you can go down all the way down to the actual underlying infrastructure to see what other specific events or changes have occurred on the related infrastructure, to see whether some of those may have been related to the particular incident that we're observing right now. So in order to find out what's actually going on here, we're going to go through a little investigation workflow. So if I go back here to this incident that we were just looking at, the payload of that incident has got details of where that incident came from, but I'll go back to the alert that originated from the event, and I will drill down from that alert directly into the Sumo Logic UI, and by clicking this View Event button, we're triggering automatically that exact query that was used to detect the incident in the first place, and basically look at what's actually been going on with this data set. So if I, for example, go in here and I see that there's a lot of errors, some timeouts are occurring, a variety of IPs are involved, now that doesn't tell me a whole lot. So what I want to do now is I want to actually start looking at more broadly the data surrounding this specific event that was created, in order to see if there's a pattern that's indicating a greater issue. So if I, for example, select to go and look at the surrounding time range here, it will pull back all of the relevant data that is specific to this particular event. So it's going to look at across all of my servers in this category, all of the log types in this category, not just web logs, but application logs and other things, and that brings me back 5,000 pages of data. And now I'm really stuck. What do I do now? Like I can look through this, I can slice and dice this data. I may not be able to find actually what the root cause of this problem is. But we have this magic button, which I talked about a little earlier, called log reduce. This is a pattern detection technology that's based on pretty sophisticated machine learning techniques that can look at the data set and actually try to discover what are all the patterns represented in this case in these 5,000 pages of data, in order to see what actually is that thing that is causing this issue in this particular application. So it's going to take this entire data set, these 5,000 pages of data, and extract patterns from that data to show us everything in a full representative sample. So now, as this just completed running, what you see here, that in this time range, when this incident occurred, I see a lot of status, a lot of these, status type patterns, which are really only the symptom, which is what we were monitoring. That's a KPI. If I see a lot of timeouts happening, I'm going to want to look at it. But what you see here, you see this suspicious-looking pattern that emerged, which is only less than 1% of data in this data set, but it looks like it's something that could potentially hold the root cause. So we're seeing here that too many files are open on some of these hosts. I can drill down in there and see what actually, where that's coming from, and basically see that for some reason or another, a host that's powering part of this application is having trouble running because there are too many open files, probably because of some process that's running on that machine that's causing an issue. Now, we've seen this before, and we've instrumented a workflow inside of ServiceNow that allows us to actually do an automated remediation to solve this problem. Because there are two things you want to do. You want to find out why this is happening. You're going to solve it for good and remove that problem from ever occurring again. But at the same time, you don't want to spend that time doing that first, because what you want is you want to bring that application back up. So we know that one of the good ways of bringing applications back up from this type of a problem is simply by rebooting the virtual machine that this host is running in. Those open file handles are going to get closed, and the machine is going to start behaving normally. So we've actually instrumented that inside of the incident. So if I click here, we've automated through this automated change request, which will essentially send a signal directly from your ServiceNow cloud into your live application infrastructure and trigger this specific machine that the event came from to be restarted. So presumably, this has triggered a proper process. The machine is running, it's rebooting, and we're going to see whether that has had an impact on this specific machine and whether we have resolved that symptom and the application is starting to behave normally. Now, while this is running in the background, what I'll show you is a couple of other interesting things. So First of all, we also have, I mentioned earlier, the ability to observe and monitor all of the service events that Sumo Logic sends into ServiceNow. This is useful for a variety of things. First of all, it gives you sort of the posture at any point in time. It gives you what are the events that we're detecting across one app, multiple apps. You might be using this across your entire infrastructure stack. You might be using it to monitor your network, to monitor your app, and other things. This gives you the top-down comprehensive view of all of the events that are flowing by type, by severity, over time, by criticality and over time, the full details of those events, and basically gives you everything in one place where you can really understand what's going on. The next thing that I wanted to show is, okay, it looks like our automated change has actually triggered the proper reboot, and that reboot has actually resulted. So if I go here, I'll zoom into this. First, I can see here that the symptom, the response times, have actually gone back down to where we expect them to be, anywhere between 30 and 50 milliseconds. And this was the condition when we were actually running with timeless. We also see that the status is going back to normal, so that the timeout spike that we observed has actually dropped back down to expected levels, and that we're not seeing that condition anymore. So basically, we have fully instrumented remediation. The remediation solved the problem. Now is the time to actually drill down and look at what was the actual root cause of that. And one final point that I want to make sure I show is that we've also built the bidirectional UI to UI integration. So imagine you're investigating an incident inside of your Sumo Logic, and you're finding an issue on some host. So I've just run a quick query here to see to demonstrate that. I'm seeing that there's an issue on some IP on some host, that some file is not there, and some error is occurring. And maybe that could be a problem that was triggered by some change that somebody did. It may have been an approved change, and I might want to look into that inside of ServiceNow. So I can, by simply hovering or clicking on any one of these fields, even in the raw log payload, I can click and I can highlight the value I want to examine, and I can actually drill down into ServiceNow and query the alerts, the incident, and change request tables to see if there is a change or an alert that's of a different type associated with this specific entity, to see whether that could be the cause of the problem. So if I click on this, it'll actually go into the alerts table. It will actually pull up the alerts that match. And as you can see here, I queried for the IP address. I don't actually have the IP address in any of these fields, but if you drill down into that alert, you'll actually see that IP occurs in the payload of that event that was sent into ServiceNow, and same thing for changes and other things. So this hopefully demonstrates the 360-degree loop of detecting a problem, detecting a symptom, sending those events into ServiceNow, triggering workflows that promote that event into alerts and incidents, investigating those incidents, understanding the service impact, drilling back down into the investigation workflow inside Sumo Logic, finding what the actual root cause is, remediating against it, and actually solving the issue in one closed loop with this deep integration between these two tools. So that's the core capability, the integration. I think we're done with sort of the presentation part of the program. I think we're going to switch back into questions. So I'm going to turn it over back to Asta to facilitate that discussion.
Thank you, Bruno. We will now begin our Q&A session. At this time, if you have any questions, please enter them in the questions tab in the control panel. We already have a few lined up. The first one is from Bruno. It's for Bruno. What does event enriching include?
Event enriching includes a variety of things that you can get from your machine data. Event enrichment could simply be correlating data, correlating an event with other events, enriching the information within that event, correlating that event and enriching it with contextual information. So you can imagine, especially in the ServiceNow example, if you tap into the CMDB information from ServiceNow, you find an IP address, something's going on with that IP address. You want to know which host is this IP address has been leased to. Is that host a finance host? Is that host an HR host? Or is this a QA host? It gives you the ability to enrich the information in the event that will help you contextualize the event and determine the actual priority of that event as you continue to investigate. Because you might not need to wake up somebody in the middle of the night if the host that's having an issue is a QA host versus a production application host. So that's one of the ways of enriching events.
Thank you. The next question is for Dan. What's your advice on building a business case to make the implementation of this integration a priority?
Yeah, good question. I think first, think about the business problem that the integration will solve. So think less about monitoring infrastructure and think more about what are the business metrics. The two metrics that I'd say most joint customers look at when they cost justify the integration work are reducing downtime for critical business services and improving productivity for NOC or SOC operators, whoever's managing the data center infrastructure. And maybe just to put numbers to those examples, just maybe to give you on the webcast kind of a framework to go and do the analysis on your own. If we were to focus on those two business metrics, let's first take improving productivity. So if you're doing, say, just round numbers, 100,000 events per month, and let's say 10% of those require some kind of human intervention, and if you could save, call it 10 minutes per each of those events that require human intervention in the course of a month, and you apply kind of a standard metric of about $50 per operator's time per hour, spread that across the year, that's about $1 million in bottom line cost savings just from improved productivity. And then if you layer on top of that reduced downtime, so again, just using round numbers, but let's say you're at 99.95 uptime SLA, and you could, through this kind of proactive monitoring approach, get that uptime SLA to 99.99, 2 nines, certainly within reason for most most modern cloud services providers. If you extrapolate that out, that translates into about 17 minutes of additional uptime per month. And then if you apply, pick your number, but some reasonable cost per minute of downtime, call it $10,000 per minute of downtime, in or whatever it is for your environment, and you do the math, that translates into another about $2 million in bottom line cost savings per year. So that plus the productivity, you've got a real good cost justification, and the ROI on that's going to be certainly on the order of months if you're getting $3 million in cost savings from the integration. But mostly back to the way I started, identify your stakeholders, identify your business metrics, quantify what success looks like, and present that as a business case to your stakeholders.
Thank you, Dan. The next question is for Bruno. Can it integrate with any existing application, or does it need to be developed with hooks for the Sumo Logic software?
It's a great question. I think I'm going to just make sure I understand it. So I think the question is most asking whether the Sumo Logic ability to collect information from all of the applications requires specific integration with those apps. So no, Sumo Logic basically integrate with your apps, whether they're custom or off the shelf, by simply tapping into their log data, right? So we put in probes, we get that data, it's completely unintrusive, you don't have to instrument your application, there are no APIs to modify, you don't need to put this anywhere within your app or infrastructure, you simply point our collection engine to your log files, or you point your syslog sources back at Sumo Logic, and the data starts flowing and you're immediately up and running. So there's very little need to integrate. If you, for example, run your application inside Heroku, platform as a service, we use Heroku drains to get that data directly into Sumo Logic. Even there, where you don't actually control the infrastructure, you can get this done without any specific code changes or integration with your apps. Inside of AWS or your on-premise infrastructure, we also support out-of-the-box content for some specific open source component that might power your infrastructure. So if you're using Apache technologies like Tomcat or Apache Web Server or other things, or IIS from Microsoft, we got pre-baked content and queries and correlation rules for all those. So it's even easier. You simply point Sumo Logic at your logs, and you essentially let that content render important analytics on top of that data.
All right, thank you, Bruno. I think we have a related question. How does Sumo Logic select events and send them to ServiceNow? Where is that hook created, and is it part of the search action?
Great. So that's a great question. So it can be as simple, and I think I'm still sharing my screen, so I might as well be on that. As simple as creating a simple query once you have that data. You inside of Sumo Logic UI, you have the ability to create as many ServiceNow instances as targets of those events. So here I'm showing one that we use. This is our dev instance that we use for this demo. So you configure it. You can have a dev, prod, test, what have you. And then you have a variety of ways of sending data from Sumo Logic into ServiceNow. So simply by saving an event, saving a query, in this case, this query, which we haven't actually configured to send data into ServiceNow, but if I wanted to go and see this query, and if I wanted to configure it to send data into ServiceNow, it's pretty straightforward. So I simply select how I want to run this query. If I want to run it in real time, great. I select real time. I want to tell it over how much real-time window you want it to run, and then you can tell it I want to send it to ServiceNow. I select which ServiceNow instance I want, and I put in default fields that will override data that's coming from the query, and you're ready to go. And the moment I save this, if this query running in real time detects any events, the events will start flowing. So it's pretty straightforward. It's simple to modify, simple to maintain, and we'll get you going really, really quickly.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for Dan. How is this integration different from other vendors who claim they have an app for ServiceNow?
Yes, so there are a lot of different approaches out there, and if you look at our list of certified integrations on our public website, you'll see that there are a variety of monitoring solutions that feed either our incident management or event management applications and do similar things. So I'd encourage you to look at what's out there. The thing that we at ServiceNow find really compelling about the Sumo Logic integration is, first of all, we like the native cloud architecture of Sumo Logic. We feel like that's a good fit for our native cloud architecture, and we really, in kind of side-to-side testing versus alternatives, we felt like the kind of scalability and the compatibility with our event management architecture made it a good fit. So as a result of that, this is the one option that's out there that's a certified integration that we actually committed joint resources to develop. And the other thing that we really like about the Sumo Logic application is what Bruno discussed, the log reduce capability, and also the kind of anomaly detection capability, the ability to go beyond the events that the operator knows to search for, to include things that are anomalous that the system can actually detect when the user is not sure what to search for. So it's kind of that combination of things that caught our eye, and we think distinguish this integration. But you know, again, it's not the only one out there, but this is certainly the one that we've made the most significant strategic commitment to.
Thank you, Dan. The next question is for Bruno. What are the examples of anomalies that Sumo Logic can uncover, and will I be notified about every anomalous event? How does Sumo Logic reduce false positives?
Thanks. That's a good question, actually. So a variety of techniques can be applied to detect anomalous behavior. Some of them will be done through KPIs. So a lot of you who operate applications and things know what those KPIs are. In our demo scenario, there was some timeout-based thresholds, some response times that you care about, and things like that. The more interesting ones are the ones that you don't really know. And how do you detect the anomalous behavior that you didn't really know how to encode into queries or rules or searches? I happen to be poking around on our anomaly detection screen. What our anomaly detection does, it's a machine learning-based technique that will observe how behavior of your signatures and patterns inside of your logs occurs and what the significance of that behavior change is. So I just happened to be looking at the screen here, and this was about the time when we had that issue, about 10:15 this morning. This event was a new event that occurred in this time window, and that event was actually very much associated with the event we observed through our KPI. So what that event looked like, it basically looked like that amongst a variety of data sets here, some Cisco network gear data, some Apache data, it looked like there was a timeout spike. And here our engine detects, observes the shifts and percentage and standard deviation based type changes in those patterns, and allows you to investigate in place, get to the bottom of that data, and actually determine, your operators who know this stuff will determine to what level this is important. So you can tag it with severity, name it, and things like that. And so this system learns over time. It learns based on what you tell it. It learns based on severity. It uses pretty sophisticated statistical analysis to determine what's wrong, and then it will learn from humans and over time get better and better. So you may see some false positives. Those are unavoidable even if you're using thresholds, but it learns over time and gets better as it observes your application behaving and humans interacting with it.
Great, thank you. And we have one more question for you, Bruno. How do we map events in Sumo Logic to different fields and CIs in ServiceNow?
So it really depends. So there's a variety of ways. So it could be as simple as when you create a query, a correlation rule that's going to detect event, if you know that that event is looking at a specific business service or things like a CI, like an SAP financial application, you can literally wire it directly into that CI. But that's not the interesting scenario. The more interesting scenario is to actually have a pretty good mapping between the way that your logs are written, your context information, the CMDB, and your ServiceNow CIs, right? So in this case here, we use a variety of ways of mapping that data. In one case, we actually wired it directly into the financial accounting. We also have the ability to pass host. The ServiceNow Event Management API has inputs. Those inputs are severity, node, source, resource, and things like that. And the node field is the thing that carries the actual CI mapping. And so as we extract fields and data from the events and the underlying raw logs, we can map those fields into the node and input fields and other input fields into ServiceNow. And as that event is delivered, severity is examined, it will map. If it can map, it will map it automatically because it finds the appropriate IDs. You can also build a small workflow trigger that resolves that ID against CMDB or something like that and maps it, or you can wire it directly. So there's a variety of ways of accomplishing that, but that's one of the core benefits, that you can actually take the raw event and map it to your CI to enrich it.
Great. We have time for just one more question, and that's for Dan. You mentioned that there are two versions of the Sumo ServiceNow integration. Can you elaborate what's the difference?
Yes, certainly. For customers that are not yet on our Eureka release, our latest release, the integration will push Sumo events into incident management as incidents. For customers that are on the Eureka release using our event management application, which is new in Eureka, Sumo can generate ServiceNow events in our event management console or incidents in our incident management application.
Great. Looks like we may actually have time for one more question. So I'll give that to Bruno. How does Sumo Logic scale to support each customer's compute and storage requirements?
Okay, so that's a good question. Sumo Logic, the architecture of Sumo Logic is very much a cloud-based architecture where you as a customer don't have to concern yourself with how many nodes do I need. You don't have to concern yourself with how much data you're going to send. We have a big, massive, single multi-tenant backend which basically provisions automatic amount of capacity to our customers as they demand it. So as you send data, as you spike in the amount of data that you're sending, for example, during this particular incident, we probably have received significantly more data because there was some new logs being generated. If you turn on your debug mode because you're investigating, all of that is completely fine. Our backend will scale automatically to ingest that data, to absorb those shocks and those bursts. We will also scale our compute infrastructure. So if you're running big queries over, you have dozens of users running queries and searches, we have the ability to automatically scale our compute engine and provision you appropriate amount of capacity so that you get consistent performance. You never have to worry about how do I run this big data infrastructure myself. it is all done for you. So think of it as a very simple SaaS solution where we solve all the problems and take care of running it and operating it and scaling it and security and all of that, and you just get to use it and derive value from it.
Great, and that concludes our webinar. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We will be making the recording of this webinar available to all attendees. Thank you, and have a great day.